Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by FireUsMarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode where we are joined by Deanna Dawson. Deanna is a strategic and results-driven professional with a wealth of experience in developing and executing effective social media strategies. Her passion lies in enhancing brand presence, boosting engagement, and shaping a positive online reputation. Her approach involves leveraging social media trends and consumer insights to inform targeted influencer partnerships. She has a knack for leading cross-functional teams, managing budgets, and ensuring flawless campaign execution. No matter whether she was working with early CNET startups or massive corporations like Hewlett-Packard, Deanna's customer obsession has remained a passion throughout her entire career. In short, she loves what she does. Welcome to the show, Deanna.
Thank you so much, Eli.
Yeah, I'm real excited to talk to you. I've had a handful of people tagged you in the LinkedIn post when I was asking for experts, and they had so many good things to say about you. And just having those conversations, just like before the show, about what you know and your history and how many companies you've worked for, I'm really excited to really dive into this episode. So, tell me about yourself.
Yeah. I love the podcast format. That's probably one of the reasons people were tagging me as well. You want me to get started with from the very beginning, how I got into this career?
We can start as early as you want. Where'd you grow up? What'd you want to be when you grew up? And if you wanted to be in digital marketing or an astronaut or whatever, how'd you go from there to where you're at now? So kind of fill in that story.
So my parents didn't start college till I was about 8 or 9. So they did undergraduate degrees, master's degrees, graduate degrees. And so we moved all over. It was West Virginia, New Jersey, California. And we moved about every 3 years.
Mhm.
And so I loved new experiences, new people, new stories. And I was an avid reader. And so I wanted to be a writer when I grew up. And I became an English lit major, which everyone tells you will not make any money. And so when I graduated in the early 90s, they were right. I didn't make any money. And I was living in San Francisco, and I was a nanny. And a friend of mine who was a writer got a job at CNET, had a little startup called Snap. They were going to build a directory. And this will be shocking to those of you who are younger. But when this directory was being built, we had AOL and Yahoo, and you would put that as your start screen. And on it looked like a magazine or a newspaper. You had your news section, your lifestyle, your family, sports, and then you would drill down into categories that were of interest to you. So CNET was starting one, and they called it Snap. For some reason, I tend to stay with that word. And they needed writers to come in and write about these topics. And so she had gotten a job there, and she got me one working for their directory. And I must say, I really didn't know what I was talking about when I went in. I tried her computer for like 2 hours one day and went in and said I knew a lot more than I did. And so I worked on the directory, and this will be shocking to you. This is pre-search. This is pre-Google. So basically, our job was to build categories of websites. We got off a printed sheet, and then we would say you have automobiles under lifestyle, and then you have makes, and then you have Audi, and then you have Audi clubs, things like that. And so our job, you need a lot of people to do that. And for every website we'd put in a directory, we wrote a little blurb about it. So I quickly rose up the ranks and became the head of the directory. And I hired a bunch of English and library majors. I called it Revenge of the English Majors. I was hiring waiters.
Wow,
I was
nice.
hiring receptionists. And we were making money that we never thought we'd make. So, and then we all started making a lot of money. And that was really exciting to be able to show that, that English lit degree came in handy. And then I remember when Google came along, and it was such a big deal. And, people were starting to use it and talk about it. And I knew the writing was on the wall for this one. We were starting to close human-made directories, SGs. Some people had been going over there building a directory. And so I went to, at the time it was called Snapfish. I went from Snap to Snapfish, and we were a photo startup
Mhm.
which developed actual film rolls. This is before you had a camera on your phone. I mean, I've been in this business 20 years, so I'm taking you guys
Yeah,
back a ways, and we would develop your film at a really low
I
price
love
and
it.
put your photos online. And so that went from a
Mhm.
startup, and we survived the startup, demise. And we were super frugal, and we made some choices, and we made some good partnerships. And slowly, I was the head of the site. I was the producer and in charge of UX and design. And as your company gets bigger, that removes you from
Mhm.
customers. I loved the customer aspect. And when you're a startup, you move very nimbly. What are the customers doing? Let's change it.
Yeah.
The bigger you get, the further you are away from the customer. And so we started getting
Mhm.
some like free PR. We did not have any PR group. And I
Mhm.
was like, wait, there's this free marketing. Why aren't we doing this? And so I just moved into marketing, which I would have said early in my career, I would never be a marketer. And I absolutely love
Mhm.
it. You are so close to the
Mhm.
customer. You get to make, you put something out, you see if it works, you change it. You put something else out, you see if it works, you change it. And so I just have loved marketing since the 20 years I've been in it. It's great, and it's great for people who are interested in customer stories and how to amplify those stories. So that is how I became a social media marketer.
That's crazy. So I think there's a lot of little nuggets in there that I want to kind of dissect a little bit. So one thing you said, which I think is really valuable for a lot of people just kind of getting started, is you did this and had no idea what you were doing in the beginning and was able to take it from that to leading the team. I think a
Yep,
lot of people go in with sort of this self-sabotage saying like, I'm not qualified for this. Like if you look at the job description and you check off every single box, you're overqualified for it. There's
that's
no
right.
room for growth, and I think it's a good example here where you went in and you're like, I had no idea what I was doing, never been in the digital world before, and ended up really like succeeding and leading that team. So that's one. I think that's amazing. I think the other thing is it's really good for people to understand what life was before search. Right. I was young. I was in high school when this was happening. And I do remember, like, I remember in like junior high, people saying, oh, there's this thing where you can like send an electronic letter that'll like go to the other side of the world instantly. And I was like, how does the stamp work so fast? Like I couldn't conceptualize that, right? And now I have my kids, and I actually told them that story the other day, and they're like, "You're so old, Dad. Like that never happened." You tell your kids you're older than Google, then like that's the new I'm older than dirt saying you're older than Google.
That's right. That's right. You'll appreciate this. We were a photo site, and we got most of our customers. The whole idea behind the site was we will develop your film and put it online, and then you can share those photos with friends, which was very hard to do. This is before social media.
Mm-hmm.
And so 80% of
Yeah.
our traffic was just handed to us from people coming in to look at their friends' photos, and then they got it. So at first, our marketing budget was nothing. We did not need it to be very high. And I
Yeah.
remember I had an intern who that was from college that summer, and she says, there's this thing, it's called a Facebook that we're using. I think it was called the Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And she said,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's gonna be using this. And I tried to get the people at the top to say, hey, she really thinks we should be paying attention here. And we were like, no, not gonna happen. And so I love that. I want to say maybe 6 years later, we had to start putting a lot of money into marketing because if you were sharing photos, you were sharing them on Facebook, and we were paying to
Yeah.
get customers in the door.
No, yeah, I mean, I remember when Facebook was just a college thing. You couldn't even get into
That's
it. So
right.
like MySpace was the big thing. And then when they opened it up, MySpace got sort of taken over and sold to do music and stuff like that. So wow, how fun to like sort of reflect back on that. I built my first website in 1998, and it was this like really all I did was put pictures on it
Yeah.
of me and my friends. And then I would tell them, go to this URL. I didn't have a way to like text it. We didn't have texting. I think we did have email, which was like Hotmail or AOL.
Oh, yeah.
and I would send it to them and they would look at it. And it was almost like we were famous. Like, we're on this
That's
screen. Like,
right.
we'd never seen this before. So how fun to go back and like really look at before the digital world, talking about the digital revolution, right? And I think that there's probably multiple different phases of the digital revolution. One was just like conception, right? Like from the 90s to like maybe 2005 was like conception. Everyone sort of adopted it and like was okay with it. And then there was sort of this plateau for a couple of years. And I think maybe like the last 5 to 7 years, it's just completely exploded again into newer technologies, newer social medias. Now we have AI and all of this. So it's really fun to live in the time, on this earth where it's like we get all of this, which is pretty amazing. Okay, so the other thing I want to pull out from your story is the fact that you had this skill of writing that a lot of people thought that's not going to go anywhere. Like, you're not going to make any money with that. And I want people to really understand, like, if you have a passion for something, how many times have we seen that passion turn into something that has like, lots of money at the end of the tunnel, at the end of the rainbow, if you will. But if you give up now, you'll never see that at the very end. So how cool that you got into that writing. You went to college, you did that, and then it ended up being like one of your big skills that you've used over the years to make your living. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I agree. One of the digital revolution pinpoints for me is when it went on the phone. So not having your digital
Mm-hmm.
experience on a computer and having it on a phone kind of changed the trajectory of everything. And I remember those
Totally.
points in time really well. And I think yeah, it's just a world of difference and became part of your mobile life.
Totally. I'd love to see a timeline, and I'm sure it exists, where you had like your flip phones, which was just texting, and then BlackBerry was a big thing. And then I remember my brother-in-law got the first phone that was like touchscreen, looked like an iPhone. And every time he would call, it would like his cheek would like push buttons on it. And I was like, that technology is a ways out. And it was a few years later where the iPhone came out, and now pretty much all of them look like that. So kind of a cool timeline. So tell me about the last couple of years. So you had all of this build up to get where you're at, and then you become this social media expert, which is probably, within the last decade. So tell me about that. How did you get into that, and how did you start excelling and know like this is where my focus is going to be long term?
Yeah. I think that when I first started with social media, it was blog sites. So I was working on a photo site, and most photo taking happens from birth to like 10 years old. So I was
Hmm.
big on mommy bloggers. And, I was one of the tables at the first blog her event. I would do mommy blogger parties. And that was as viral as it could kind of get at the time. They would tell their friends
Yeah.
about it. And so that was the first influencer marketing really was the sort of
Hmm.
mommy bloggers. And I was deep in that world. And then, Facebook, I started it, but I was giving it, some credibility. It was, in the beginning, you could really make an impact organically. You didn't have to put money behind it. And I think that's also everything now is pay to play. I mean, and so I
Yep.
think that, one of the things fun about getting in early on all of the platforms was sort of having those moments where organic content really was what was selling, what was getting you subscribers.
Yeah.
It's interesting now on Facebook at the time, if you followed a page or liked, you were seeing our content pretty regularly. Probably like 75% of the people who were liking you could see it. Now, only 6% of people who actually follow you see your content.
Mm.
So I think people, we were
Hmm.
chasing likes and things like that at the time, which is not, the strategy I'd recommend today. But I will say that through time, every time a new platform was added, I wanted to get in early. And so we would, but I wouldn't give it a lot of credibility until I knew. I think the pace has just gotten much faster.
Yeah.
The Facebook adoption was, kind of a long and Instagram adoption and then TikTok adoption took 2 minutes. And so as each platform comes out
Yep.
and if it does get a take, I never believed in Google Sites, so I didn't pay much attention there. But, once something's going to like live, it's just
Hmm.
faster that you have to adopt it. So it was a progress over time, but I will say I the thing I love about social media is it's really relationship marketing. You put something out there,
Hmm.
people are putting their own things out there. You're gathering that. It's such an amazing feedback loop. It's such an amazing way to talk to customers. And, a marketing team could have 10 people on it, it could have 2 people on it. Hopefully, your customers are thousands and tens of thousands. They're going to have way more ideas than the 2 or 5 of us are going to have in the room. And so that ability
Hmm.
to sort of grab customer stories, there's nothing I love more than that. So I think, it's just I fell in love with sort of the taking a customer's, how their solution, you know, using your product for a solution, how it's making their life better, how they're being creative with it. All of those things excite me. And no matter how high I've gotten in my role, like, I don't do the posting anymore. I'm not making the videos. I still am going in and looking at tags on the brand because there's nothing I like more than seeing how customers are using your product.
Yeah, that's so you're so right. And it's pretty real time data too, right? Like you don't have to
Mhm.
wait weeks to really understand what what your product how your product is being accepted out there in the market. I
Exactly.
like how Gary V talks about day trading attention, like it is on a daily basis. Like you are out there, you're trying to get the attention of the customer, trying to learn what they want, you're trying to adapt to what they want and make your product fit the masses, right? In a lot of the podcasts, we've talked about data and some of the struggles that companies have where they focus on the squeaky wheel instead of what the
Yep.
data says.
Yep.
Do you have any experience or advice for companies out there who are doing that, who maybe lean more towards the handful who are loud versus the majority who maybe need something different?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one is a reminder of, what the actual percentage are. I know, like, one of the things I would have to explain to a C-suite group a lot is they want to put something very local. And what you don't understand, even if you have 1 million followers, they're based all over the United States. So if I put something about the town that the business is in, or a team that is only in one state or one area, it's a very small percentage of people who actually will be able to relate to that. So I always am trying to keep in
Hmm.
mind who your real audience is on social and how vast it is. And so, when we want to target so small, I do have to go and remind people actually, that's like a very small percentage of the population that I can talk to. I am at first when Facebook started, if your site went down, you would go on Facebook and say, "Our site's down." I don't know if you remember this. And then what you realize, probably
Hmm.
only
Yeah.
1% of the people who might be on there at any given time is trying to get on your site right now. And so, like, it's just a matter of
Yeah.
learning, like, where the right avenues are. If you want to put a banner at the top of the site, great, because that is relevant to the people entering your site. The rest of the
Going.
people who follow you
Uh-huh.
do not want to know your site's down right now. Unless you're like a major provider
Yeah.
of like, the internet, like if you're TikTok maybe
Yeah.
or something, but in general,
Yeah.
um, I like to remind people that the algorithm favors good content. So whenever you force me to put out bad content, less people are going to see the content. And that is an argument I
Hmm.
use for making sure you're going to put out good content. You are rewarded for good content. You are punished for bad content. And it's really important that you put out messages that have more mass appeal and less singular appeal.
So can we dig into that just a little bit? So put out good. So the message is put out good content, not bad content. So if I'm a business owner, I'm sitting back and I'm like, okay, so I can understand if the website's down and I don't like that's bad content. What else could we loop into that category of bad content versus good content? And how can I, as a business owner, figure out what good content is for me?
Yeah. I think one of the things that you have to remember is this is a relationship, not a pipeline to tout your, achievement. So sometimes people will say,
Hmm.
"This is what I want users to know about us," and I have to challenge and say, "Is that what customers want to know about us?" I know what the owner wants. customers to know, but what do customers want to know? And
Hmm.
so it's really, really important. Social media is not a megaphone. It is a relationship. So when you decided to follow us, when you decide to click on our video, we are saying this is something that you're going to enjoy. It's going to solve a problem. It's going to, make your life better. It's going to make you laugh. It's going to make you recognize yourself. And so I really want people to veer
Hmm.
away from things that feel very megaphone. You have to remember consumers are being hit with hundreds of brands every day. They are not following your brand to the level that you are behind those doors. And so the more like
Yeah.
human you can make your content, the more likely that 10,000 people are going to go, hey, that's me. I hate getting up in the morning too, and I need coffee. The more people who are going to like. So you try to make it as resounding as you can for people to recognize themselves and less about, hey, I'm a brand and you need to hear this from me.
That's valuable. I heard a podcast the other day that talked about that exact thing. If you're telling your story about you and it resonates with you, that's it. If the audience can feel like it's they can resonate with it, like, oh, I can see myself in that situation, that's where your content's going to start to really.
That's the magic content you want right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that is. Um like what are some of your fun projects? What are you working on now? What excites you and gets you up in the morning?
Well, I'm looking for a job right now. So that does not get me up in the morning. But I left Zenny last year and I decided to take a keyboard
Mhm.
break. And it was interesting because a lot of women in my peers, 45, 45 plus, a lot of us were doing that. It was just when you've been in it for 20 years, you've been sitting in front of a keyboard, you just need a break. And so I took a break and I decided to try van life with my dog. And it's not the Instagram picture that I wanted it to be. And so I hated it. And so I wouldn't recommend it, especially during hot weather. And so I am looking for a job and I I really firmly believe that, I want to work somewhere where I love the brand. Authenticity, I feel is super
Mhm.
important, especially in social media marketing. And so, but I also kind of think it'd be fun to problem solve a brand, like a brand that's not sexy or doesn't doesn't bring emotion to the table. I would love to go in and like, let's find what's sexy. Let's find where the emotion is. And so, I
Yeah.
don't know. I either want a great brand or a challenge. So that's what I'm looking for right.
Nice. Okay. So let's use the rest of this podcast as a video resume for you that maybe we can send out there and find the right brand for you. How about we do that?
No, let's not do that.
What I mean by that is if we dive into some of the tactical stuff, brands are going to look at this and they're going to be like, "Oh, she knows what she's talking about. I'm going to reach out to her." That's what I mean by
There you
video
go.
interview
There
is
you
let's
go.
get your skills out there
Yeah.
and talk through some of that tactical stuff.
Eli, am I gonna owe you a finder's fee if I get the job from this? I don't know what percentage you're gonna get, but you get some finder's fee. What would I recommend if I was starting, if I was a small company starting and I knew we had to be on social media. I don't think there's anybody out there who's thinking, "Hey, I can do
Mhm.
this all without social media." The one thing I think you need to start out is which platforms you need to be on, and you don't need to be on all of
Mhm.
them. I would say
Okay.
that even large companies now, you used to see that ticker tape of social icons across the bottom are removing some of
Mhm.
them. You do not need to be on every platform. In fact, I'd rather you focus on a couple good ones than just milk, water down everyone. So first of
Mhm.
all, you want to see which platforms you want to be on. And also if you're starting, you just aren't going to have the content to fill every platform. So go where it's smart to go. And the way I would make that decision is first of all, do a little research. There's lots of charts out there that are easy to understand on demographics. Are you are you appealing to men or is it a men's clothing line? Is it makeup? You'll see which platforms appeal to those users. If it was makeup, I'd be on
Mhm.
TikTok and Instagram. If I was doing like sporting goods, I might do Snapchat and X and YouTube. So, look for what we already know to be true about social platforms. The second thing I would do is listen and where are people already talking about you. So I would go into the social platforms, search your brand. If you have any hashtags out there, search that. And you'll see where
Mhm.
people are talking about you, and that will help you make a decision. And then I'd recommend that you do spend the money. It's not very much. I think it's like $25 a month for a lower brand to be on something like Similar Web. Similar Web
Hmm.
is a, uh, a traffic site, and it'll give you great details. But I'm going to tell you in a minute why I think you should sign up for one of these. HubSpot will do it.
Okay.
There's about 10 of these. Some are more SEO focused. Similar Web.
Hmm.
When you go on there, you might be on a merchandising platform that already shows you where your traffic's coming from. But
Hmm.
it'll give you more details on where your traffic's coming from. It'll give you the breakdown of, is it coming from Instagram? Is it coming from YouTube? What's the percentage of your social traffic coming from? But then I would look at your competitors and see where their social traffic's coming from. And so let's say you look at it and you're
Okay.
like, well, I'm getting 10% of my traffic from YouTube, but my competitors are getting 40% of their traffic from YouTube. I would look and say, is there an opportunity here that we're missing? Now, it could be because you're killing it on, Facebook, but it also could be that you're just missing an opportunity and they found a way to get people off those. So make some decisions about which platforms you really need to be on, and then you can add some along the way, by the way.
Okay.
Um, and
Okay.
then the second thing I would do after I figured out which platforms I'm going to be on is you have to figure out how you're going to feed these platforms. How are you going to get content and how
Hmm.
often you're going to post? And one of the things I will say is they're going to tell you TikTok says you should post as a brand twice a day. No one's going to meet that. Don't, I would ignore that. No one's going to post twice a day. So
Hmm.
figure out what's good for your brand and your customers and what you're capable of doing. I wouldn't go more
Okay.
than a week on any platform. That's for sure. I would at the very least do 3 times a week for any platform you've decided to be on, except YouTube. Unless you're doing
Hmm.
shorts, you could do those more often, but, YouTube is hard to feed at a quick rate. But for the other ones, I would plan at least, 3 to 4 times a week as you start out. Um, and then the other thing
Okay.
I would say as you're building content, just 2 things I always have to remind people, and that is 80 plus
Hmm.
percent of people who are looking at your content are looking at it on their phone and they're looking at it in a feed. They are not going to your brand page and looking through all the content. They are seeing it in a
Mm.
feed. And so, what you need to do is to make sure your brand is mentioned or you can see it within 3 seconds of any video or any content you put out. And that could just be you put a link on it, you have a logo, or someone says your brand. So I would say make sure because people flip fast and you want to make sure that the content you
Hmm.
have, people know as they're looking in their feeds that they know what brand they're seeing this great content from.
Is that every single post?
I would say no, not every single post. Most of them, it says what your brand is in the top. TikTok's a little different where you can't see the brand as clearly. So I would say, I think some of them you can get
Hmm.
away, but if you're doing a studio built, you can just put your logo as the front lead on it. If you're not, if I'm using influencers, I ask them to say it in the first 5 seconds. And remember with
Okay, that makes sense.
influencers, you're going to be deciding whether that content is on their feed or on your feed. You're not putting it on both because it actually
Hmm.
lessens your ability to get that to grow. So what you're going to do if it's in their
Okay.
feed is you want to get your brand in there as fast as you possibly.
Okay. Can I dig into that a little bit?
Yes.
So just one question on that. So I've been thinking about maybe doing a handful of podcasts with a few experts. So instead of just like one on one, have a few experts get on and talk about a specific topic, right? Maybe it's SEO that week or whatever. Can we chop it up in certain ways so that it can go on all 3 or 4 of our platforms? Or
Yes.
you're saying that's not good? Or
I would say in TikTok, it's not good because it wants to favor one. So in TikTok, for example, I would have one, but I do think if it looks different, then you do it. So what I do when I hire an influencer is they have to make content that's slightly different for theirs, and then I have one for me. So I take both. I use both in the same.
okay.
And then the other thing I would do
Oh, cool.
too, and this is you're not using influencers, but like, maybe their face is the front one if they're going to put it on their feed. Then each of them get their own
Mm,
faces
yeah.
or something like that. So I think now if they're just
Okay.
sharing someone's content, obviously it's going to look exactly the same and that's perfectly fine. And that builds a lot of, value as well if they just repost it from your
Okay.
site. So that's also valuable because then it keeps
Yeah.
the count. of all the people who viewed it on yours and all the people who view it on theirs. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, no. And then the other thing I was going to say is when you're putting together content, I just want you to remember how ephemeral it is. And that means how fast of a shelf life it has. So there's charts out there where you'll
Okay.
find this, but on Pinterest, content can live for 6 months. On TikTok, it lives for a couple minutes. And so I always think about effort
Mm-hmm.
when I'm making content. Like, how long is this content going to live?
Mm,
If I'm putting money behind it,
yeah.
it'll live a lot longer, but still, I don't want
Mm-hmm.
you to spend 3 days putting together something that's only gonna live for, half a day, so that would be my recommendation.
Good call. Yeah. Okay, all of that is amazing. I think it's super valuable from a business standpoint, kind of listening to that and understanding like, okay, so one, we got to figure out what platforms, not all of them, but what platforms. Then we go and look at the hashtag, see if you're already being mentioned. Then you mentioned that there's tools that we can go and look at to see where the gaps are and where, potential opportunities are for us to post. Then how often we post, how long it lives. I think those are all really, really good um, takeaways. Can we dive into maybe a little more specific to each individual platform?
Yeah, and I wanna talk to you about where to find the content and how to get the content too. So, yeah,
Okay.
I think when
Yeah.
you
Great. Okay.
realize you're gonna need content, the interesting thing is the format. So you have stories, you have threads, you have live, you have shop, you have expandable
Mm,
pins. Like, they're not
mm-hmm.
only are we talking different platforms, but on each platform, you've gotta choose which format you're going to do. And so I think that
Yeah.
one of the things that we used to believe, and now this is outdated, is every platform needed its own specialized content. I would not recommend that anymore just because there's so many. And TikTok's success has made everyone try to replicate that a bit. So I do use
Mm-hmm.
TikTok videos for my, stories on Instagram and for my shorts on YouTube. They do perfectly fine there. You can even, if you're happen to be on Snapchat, you can use some of them there. So I will say that we are doing a little bit more repurposing these days just because we're saddled with so much content needed. But the
Mm-hmm.
3 things I recommend for getting content, one is you could have in-house designers, but like I said, that is not gonna fill your content funnel. So the first place I
Mm-hmm.
go is employees. So your employees can make great brand ambassadors. You will find someone who maybe is super knowledgeable and could do sort of educational pieces on TikTok or YouTube. You may have an employee that likes to style the product you're wearing with a different look every day. And one of the things I love to do is make a something that we do every week so no one has to think about it. So if it's like Friday Fashion Day, then you always know you're gonna have a Friday and you don't have to think of a new concept every Friday. So
Yeah.
I do like
Yeah.
things that are, sort of, ritualized like that so that you're not rethinking every Friday, "What are we gonna do?" It used to be that when you were never have your employee act like a customer. That is in very bad form. You will get caught. There's lots of examples. But you don't have to say, "As an employer of this brand," you don't have to say it like that. You can say, "Here at
Right.
da da da, these are my favorite looks this week," or, "The team and I were talking," like, there are ways to say you work for the company, or it could say underneath you something like, "Our most fashionable employee," or, "The one who
Mm,
knows it all."
mm-hmm.
Like, you can think of fun ways and different ways to say, "I work here," without just making sure the caveating it with your work here, but I do wanna make sure you don't look like just a customer if you work there, make sure that's clear. And then the other thing you'll wanna do is have
Yeah.
employees sign some sort of, um, that you own the content, and one signing is enough. If you say always as you work for social media, and the reason you wanna do that is if they leave your company, you don't wanna have to go back and erase all that content and find all the content. So you do wanna
Yeah.
make sure that they agree that the content they create is yours in perpetuity. Um, and so, there was
Okay.
Adobe was sort of famous at the time for their most popular social being a few of their artists who work on their Adobe platforms, and they just were experts and they knew so much and, they were doing far better than the corporate, as profile. So I always love that story. And then the second thing I would
Yeah.
do is look at your customers. I call them brand ambassadors. That can be formal or informal. And your customers, if they use
Hmm.
the @ symbol in your brand name, you actually have rights to repost that content. Legally, you are fine. If they haven't done
Oh,
that,
wow.
you might want to ask them, like, hey, we saw this. This was great. Can we use it? If they at you, they're looking to get showcase. If one in a million they don't like it, you take it
Yeah.
down. That's all.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think that, customers make amazing content. You'll want to repost it and you always want to give them credit for it and link to their accounts just
Mm.
as a thank you for doing that. And the other thing I would say is if you work for a company whose product is, low cost of goods, and it's even better if it's high margin low goods, because then it looks value high,
Mhm.
cost to you small.
Mm.
Give products as a thank you. And so I've been fortunate to work with glasses,
Mm.
but they're, glasses that are at much lower price. And I worked with photo products and things like that, which made it really easy for me to start with giveaways before I was signing a contract and giving away dollars. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just like, customer of the week and just accolades alone make people feel amazing. And people are very excited to have their content shared. So it always does good for you to do that. And then, they're going to want to
Yeah.
tell all the aunts and grandparents and everyone go look, my kid's being featured and you're going to get more traffic.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
platforms for brand ambassadors if you want to go big. I did put in one. I've done two where I've put them in and I love them. And it's a little bit like affiliate marketing. They make some money off of sales and you can actually put your employees into it as well and they can win prizes and stuff if you're a big enough company. But I love brand ambassadors because these are people who already love your brand. You're not paying them to love your brand. If they're already talking about your brand, they're a
Mhm.
brand ambassador, and you want to make sure you're harnessing all the love and appreciation and marketing and leads they can send your way. And then the last group I would say is
Yeah,
influencers.
absolutely.
And this is you're going to pay them to talk about your brand and create content. And
Mhm.
with influencers, it's gotten much more sophisticated than when I started. You can get some pretty cheap influencer platforms if you want to do it yourself. They will show you what other brands the influencers talked about and what their following is. So, if you have a very pretty woman who has 50% of her followers are males in Europe, you might not want to put your makeup brand there. You can see if they had a steep increase and it looks like they bought followers. So you can be much more targeted,
Yeah.
making sure that the ambassadors you're hiring, the influencers you're hiring, are legit or speaking to the audience you're looking for. And I use influencers for three things. One is reach. If you're looking for new customers and you want to reach their customers, then you want to look for someone who has
Mhm.
the high following and gets a lot of engagement. You could be hiring them because you want content. Maybe they do, stop motion graphics and you think that'd be really cool for your brand for an ad. It could be that they are like they do skiing and you want to see someone skiing and they're going to do a GoPro and if that's still what they call it and
Mhm.
get that content. So the second thing you do is you hire them for the content and they make great content and you want that great content. Usually you're going to put that on your own channel instead of their channel. And then the last one is I hire them for authenticity. It's very rare. Let's say you have a children's brand. It's very rare that you have easy access to kids using these products. So what you're going to do is get an influencer that's a family
Mhm.
influencer and the kids are using the products. If you have a holiday like Cinco de Mayo, you might want a Latino family who really celebrates Cinco de Mayo doing that and and showing us the
Mhm.
joy of what they do. So I always look for influencers to fill spaces that I feel like need an authentic voice, and you might not have that easily available to you. And so those are sort of the three ways that I recommend getting content, but also in the order I'd recommend if I was a small business just starting up, I
Okay.
would, do employees, brand ambassadors, and last influencers just because I don't want you spending your money before you've kind of figured out, what kind of content's really going to serve you well for whatever your goals are, if it's
Mhm.
traffic, if it's revenue, if it's credibility, et cetera.
That's a great approach. Do you have any websites or tools that you recommend if somebody does want to get to that third step and find those influencers?
Yeah, I can't remember them off the top of my head, I'm sorry, but I will tell you that I've used several types. There's one type where you go in and you just look at them and you man them yourselves. The thing that the platform takes advantage of for you, it is very hard to write small contracts and pay small wages. These people could be earning $100 from you. You do not want to be writing checks for
Mm-hmm.
$100. So what these platforms do is they give you a payment system and an auto a contract, so you're not writing contracts. I've also used companies that
Okay.
do all the work for us. They find the influencer, they make sure the content looks great. Um, they come up with the deal, they pay them, they have contracts. And so, it's a matter of whether you want to do self-serve or you're going to
Hmm.
pay someone to actually do the heavy lifting for you. And I've worked with both.
Have you written any of this down? Do you have a book out? Like, this is such good content. You should be sharing this more than
Well,
just on podcast.
Well, you know what is so funny is I've been meaning to at least write a Medium article on how to use influencer marketing, and so you kind of
Yeah.
was like, if I had written that article, I could be pointing to it right now. So yeah, I'm gonna write an article shortly here just to get people started, and then I think the second article I really want to write is about what makes good content. So I think there's two
Yeah.
articles in here, or yeah, at least long articles like I'd love to write.
How about we just pretend like it's out and I'll put the URL. You go write it later, and then
There you
when you
go.
send me the link, I'll put it up here. Or I'll share it on social media and be like, "Hey, remember that time we were talking about this article? Now here it is." So I mean that's only one portion of everything that you've talked about over the last 30 minutes though. Like I think it would be valuable to put that down into, some video trainings or just an ebook or something. Like you have just so much knowledge in your head over almost 3 decades of experience. Like you
Yeah.
should get that out to some people.
I think that's why my friends are like, "You should start a podcast." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I probably yeah." But I praise you for taking the initiative and doing it.
Yeah. Where do you see the future going in the social space? Do we need to, keep
Yeah.
looking for new platforms that are coming out, or like where's it going, and what do you recommend these businesses do to stay on top?
This is interesting because malls and stores are closing all over the place. People are shopping online. So if you're an e-commerce brand, that's
Hmm.
good news. I do think, shopping is becoming less of the experience. It's interesting that experiences right now are what's trending. Like they're turning malls into, paintball
Yeah.
and indoor soccer, and people are signing up to go through the Alice in Wonderland experience. So I do feel like people are looking for IRL
Hmm.
experiences. So the more digital we get with certain things, the more people are going to want tactile experiences. So I do think that's
Yeah.
interesting. I have tried VR already, and it makes a lot of sense for Snapchat, which is basically a phone app, a camera app. It was so easy to put glasses on
Hmm.
people. Like it was a no brainer, and they're really working on
Yeah.
VR. And so we did that where, you could literally look at yourself in the glasses. I mean, it was the perfect product for that. We did a lot of it. Is it the thing that's bringing in revenue? No, it's not, but it's kind of fun to be out there early.
Right.
So I do think there's definitely some
Hmm.
VR stuff that's going to be fun and easy to try. I do think though that people can only maintain a certain number of social media accounts and find them interesting. I think users will pare down on the number that they're looking at as well. So I think that it'll be self-selective. We just can't keep adding. Like it's not a matter of how much companies can put, it's about personal people, how many times you can look at Instagram and then look at TikTok and then have your friends message you on Facebook, etc. So I think there will be a
Hmm.
paring down. Will these be the same players? I don't know. I will say one thing though is that if you're spending money against your social ads, Meta has the
Hmm.
most accurate return. You want to say, here's what I want to spend, here's what I want to get. Meta's really good at that. But I also would not rely completely on one platform. Several times in the past, Meta has pulled the rug out from some businesses. and it hurt. And so
Yeah.
I would
Mm-hmm.
diversify a little bit, even if, Meta's your superstar, you're doing 80% of your budget there, spend 20% somewhere else. And I'm a huge believer in, testing. And so I like to test new platforms, especially around, if you have some ad dollars to spend, I would, do
Mm-hmm.
what's tried and true and then set aside some budget and test because you never know where you're going to find and who's also going to do it the best. I mean, users are finicky. And if you're all in one, and tides change, you want to make sure that you've,
Mm-hmm.
at least set up some capability to understand how that next platform is going to work for you.
Yeah, that's really smart. I've been in that position before, and I recommend the same thing. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. I had, I mean, we're talking between 13 and 15 years ago, I had like 40 different websites like going at the same time that I was maintaining. This was really before social media. I was just blogging on them, and I was paying for the content, so I wasn't like writing 40 blog posts a week or anything. But I was making money on AdSense and some affiliate links and stuff like that. And then Google came and changed their algorithm, and it was it was cheaper content, and it trashed 95% of it for me, right? And so I didn't have the time and the resources at the time to like build them back up the way that Google wanted, so I got rid of most of them. I still have a few of them, but either way, so ever since then, I've always recommended to people, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you're if you're e-commerce store, make sure that you're big on Shopify on Google, also on Amazon. If you're on Facebook, also make sure you're on these other platforms. So you're absolutely right. Don't put your eggs in one basket. I think that's great advice. Wow, how fun has this been? You are yeah, I think you'll find a job pretty quick because if once this knowledge gets out there that you are on the market and you have all of this knowledge and experience, I really hope that you get something real fast because there are companies out there looking for somebody with your expertise.
Yeah, and one of the things I've noticed over time and that I want to recommend to people as well is I've always wondered who are the people who are getting ahead? I'd see somebody in the same role forever, and then someone new come in
Mm-hmm.
and they got ahead. And I want to say, don't be afraid to get an opinion out there, even if it's wrong. People who are putting their opinions out there, even when they're wrong, getting promoted because they have opinions and
Yeah.
ideas. You're not moving. So I would say be a bit bold in your opinion making, and people are okay even if it's wrong. And I would say that, the fun
Mm-hmm.
thing about, the digital life is it changes so fast, people aren't gonna remember if you were wrong about that one. You know what I mean? Have a bold statement, don't be afraid to be a decision maker sometimes.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I would just
Yeah.
encourage people to find their voice, and, push it. If they don't wanna do it, you gotta back down. But I think that, don't be afraid to sound decisive in your opinion sometimes.
Yeah. Smart. I love it. Okay, so I wrap up all of my podcasts in the same way with a handful of questions. So I want to ask these questions to you, and I would love to hear your thoughts and advice. So, if you could go back to your younger self and give advice, what would that be?
I would say, I know this is not gonna sound very businesslike, but follow your heart. I've been in business situations where I saw people doing behavior that I did not approve of, and when I finally spoke up, those people agreed and spoke behind me. So I don't think you go wrong usually following your heart. And so I would say that one of the compliments I've been given is people did not know that they could bring their true selves to work. I feel like when we used to go to work, people put on a lot more of that business face. And that's not the case anymore. And I've had people tell me, like, I didn't know I could be my full neurotic self and still and laughing. And so I
Mhm.
just think we're at work too long not to bring your full self to work. And
Yeah,
so I guess one of the things I would say is, probably a little faster I learned to bring my full self and heart into my work life.
I love that. Be authentic, be yourself. People embrace that a lot more than a lot of the fake professionalism I think that we put on. And I
100%.
think the culture's changing a little bit, and
I do
it's
too.
yeah, I think that's great advice. Yeah. What? Okay. Second question. Do you have any books, podcast leaders, or
Oh,
potentially influencers that you that inspire you right now?
so, okay. This is good. I don't, nothing's popping off the top of my head, especially I'm bad with names. And I just want to tell you the other day, this is an example of a brand that's not very sexy, embracing what's special about them. So Costco has all these memes out there about, millennials saying, "No, I
Okay.
shop for my clothes where I buy my groceries." And instead of like leaning out of it, Costco decided to lean in. And I thought it was so smart. It's so funny. And they had a customer
Hmm.
the other day that they reposted their content whose friend loved to go to Costco. They made her a Costco birthday party that was perfect. She had to get a membership card. Everyone had to get a membership card coming in. They had all the food at the stand, like the hot dog and ice cream and the chicken bake. And everything you looked at, you're like, no, first of all, no one who works at Costco thought of that. But I also want to say, like, a lot of Costco social is just, here's the nuggets that are on sale. But I love
Yeah.
that they're starting to lean into the humor of Costco. And so that one tickled me the other day. Yes.
Yeah, I've actually seen that one, so that's how viral it's gone. So that's a really good example of
Oh,
one.
it was brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've had a lot of I've seen a lot of people like making fun of the older generation, which they're not even older, they're like 25 to 45, that wear Costco brand clothing, and like they just love Costco. So they're doing a really, really good job at branding that. This has been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I have learned a lot, and I'm excited for you to write this ebook that is in your future, even though it's not planned yet. I'm excited to get it from you and learn for myself even more. I'm going to go back after I edit this and watch and listen to this multiple times so that I can digest it for my own company. So I appreciate the knowledge and expertise that you bring to the table today.
Oh, as you can see, I love talking about this. So I really thank you for that opportunity.
You bet. How can people get in touch with you if they want to hire you on the side or full time or just to say hi?
So well, just go to my LinkedIn. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's, LinkedIn/ Deanna Dawson. So you can go there and take a look at where I've been and how I could change the course of your business.
Yeah, nice. Okay. And then I look forward to maybe doing another podcast session with you a year from now when you have a job and you've changed the world even more than you already have. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.